Hello there, and welcome to part 2 of my video, Company of Heroes 1 versus Company of Heroes 2, a 2017 showdown. We're going to be talking about the points raised in the first video and the feedback I have received, and all the discussions we've all had. It's been very productive. We've had discussions on YouTube, on Reddit, some excellent bullet points there, and on CoH2.org. I mean, notably on YouTube, we had comments from ex-developers. We had a lot of people piping in some really insightful stuff. And the same on Reddit, CoH2.org, some really interesting opinions. And it's really helped me refine my own opinions on this, because that's exactly what dialogue, discourse, and discussion breeds. And that's hopefully people can better develop their own opinions, and that's exactly what I have done. So I've got a few more things to add to my initial 40-minute video. This should be a little bit shorter, and it's more of an amendment to the original scores. And without further ado, I just want to quickly go through it all right now. So on the right side of your screen, you can see it. We've got game UI. I'm going to keep that exactly as it is. I think CoH2 was a little bit better. Graphics. People were like, whoa, CoH2's got way better graphics. The resolution's higher. The models have more pixels. It's got to be better. No, you may have read many comments on, particularly the YouTube video, and people actually in the business, etc., that just say no. What it is it's more the art style of CoH1 that is better, and you have to take into account art as well. So the art style, I'll call it, is important. So that's why I gave them the same result. Although CoH2 definitely has mechanically better graphics, it takes way more system resources. It's a beast of a game for graphics. CoH1, in some ways, looks better. And a lot of people believe that. It's not just me. You saw a hell of a lot of comments saying that CoH1 just had a better theme, better contrast, better colorization, etc. It's not about bias. It's not about saying this much better graphical game is worse. No, it's about saying you have to take both things into consideration, and on that playing field, they're pretty much damn equal. One definitely has better graphics, but the other has a better art style, so it kind of balances out. Voice acting, I absolutely maintain that CoH1, definitely for the German factions, had better voice acting ever so slightly. CoH2 definitely has some greater voice acting, namely, in my opinion, the Brits and the USF, but CoH1's ever so slightly better. Mechanics. Now, there's a big disparity here that I didn't quite cover in my first video, and the main point I missed was True Sight. How could I miss True Sight? True Sight is a mechanic that has made the game so much more interesting. You have to really consider how your unit can see in a breathing, living microcosm of a battlefield. It's very interesting. It leads to ambush tactics. It leads to better flanking. And CoH1 had great flanking. It had great maps. It had great reconnaissance and scouting. And I wish CoH2 had some of the scouting units that CoH1 had, but CoH2's mechanics in general for that are a hell of a lot better, and there were many other things I missed in a kind of a mouse and keyboard kind of standpoint that I think somebody on Reddit just listed all the life improvements, the quality of life improvements that CoH2 had. So I'm going to actually lower CoH2 and lower CoH1, increase CoH2 by 1 point both ways on that one. I really did. I didn't miss the mark. I definitely had it right, but I didn't have it right enough. There wasn't enough of a gap. Going down, I stand by CoH2 having a better capping system. I stand by CoH1 having a better resource system, namely the low, medium, and high fuel and munitions resources, and the strategic points versus standard territory points. I definitely maintain that's better. I don't think CoH2's bad, though. It's just not as good as CoH1. Menu UI, that was a really uninteresting point. Social interactivity wasn't a good enough of a category, in my opinion. And I'm going to now call that social engagement and add to that. So it does indeed take into account social interactivity, which you remember was more the chat and how you interact with the other players in the game. And I do believe that both games had pros and cons there, as discussed in the previous video. But when it comes to social engagement, I think it's clear that Relic, as a developer, have been a lot more on the ball in CoH2. A little bit sluggish to respond and to get onto things at times due to obviously probably resources, who knows. But in general, social engagement for CoH2 has been sharper. It's been multifaceted. There's been a lot more developer YouTube videos, developer streams, Twitch, obviously on the stream, Twitter, I meant, guides, the forums at coh2.org, etc. There was all this kind of thing going on in CoH1, but never in with as much depth. So if you call that part of it, the engagement with the developers, not just the engagement with the players, I think CoH2 just about ekes ahead in that regard only. Music, maintain CoH1's better. Balance, I still think having 5 factions that are viable is better than 2 amazing factions and then 2 crap factions. So I maintain that CoH2 is slightly better there. Faction design, you can't doubt the fact that CoH1 Brits were just really a big negative for CoH1, and I think the fact that they allowed the community to really help them with the design of the Western Front factions helped so much there. Abilities, this, if you remember, was commanders versus the doctrinal trees, and I'm saying CoH2 is really good still. It has a lot of variety, but in my opinion, the doctrinal trees gave a better balance. Not a better balance, sorry, a better design. It was more coherent. It made more logical sense. I still stand by that. However, I think the weighting I gave that was a bit too high in CoH1's favour, and I will just lower it by 1, so the overall score is lowered. However, the relative score is the same. Thematics, character, still the same. CoH1 wipes the board with CoH2 there. Campaign, again, CoH1, it should have been 5-2, but obviously Ardennes Assault gives it that 3 for CoH2. Modability, I stand by that. I didn't hear too many opinions to the contrary. Broadcastability wasn't a very well ironed out point. It was kind of a bit of a spacer. But I do stand by the scores there if you consider it more of a kind of, is it ready for esports? Is it something that you can take and put on a pedestal and say this is a game? So you call it broadcasting rather, and that is a definite category. You need to have this in a modern competitive computer game in order to be able to project it onto a wider stage, and I think CoH2 has the tools and CoH1 lacks the tools, so I think that's clear. Release date, I think I was slightly harsh on CoH2 there because I gave CoH1 a 5. It definitely wasn't quite as good as it was in 2011-12. If you go back to 2006, the menu is completely different. There's a few features that are lacking. It's only got the 2 factions, of course, and it did have a much better campaign at release, but the multiplayer balance was way different than what we know today. And I think it's a little bit harsh to say that it was a 5 relative to a 1. CoH2 still stays a 1 because that missed way more features than it eventually developed, and it was released in 2013 in a much less polished state, in my opinion. So I think 4 versus 1 is a little bit fairer, although it's probably a tiny bit harsh there. And there is a big point that I need to bring in at this point, and I need to think where to add this. Battle servers. Battle servers are servers hosted on the Amazon cloud, I believe, that allow us to connect to a package sharing system instead of peer-to-peer. This game isn't peer-to-peer like Company of Heroes 1 was, with the drop hacking, with the lag when it was playing somebody from Argentina or China or something. So I think the fact that CoH2 has battle servers is a massive point for CoH2. And I'm just trying to think where this would go. And you've got to consider the current state. Would it go in mechanics? I wouldn't argue it is a mechanic. Where could we slot this? Where is it a significant part of? Is it social engagement? If it is, would we push that up to 5? But it's not really social as such. So I'd really love to add just a point somewhere for that one, because it definitely is a point. I just can't figure out which in these 20 categories it falls into. Probably just going to add one to release state, because the battle servers that were there at release, and I think that is very important. Entry level and skill ceiling, stand by those points. I think the entry level for CoH2 is a little bit easier to get into. I think there's more resources available, and I think the in-game allows you to pick up on other players' activity a bit better, so it's not so heavily dependent on the community. And the skill ceiling in CoH1 is that much higher because you've got the target tables between units. You have to learn how things interrelate a little bit more than CoH2. There's armor classes for all the infantry, so there's the veterancy is a little bit more powerful. The lethality is higher. There's a little bit more to the competitive level, in my opinion, for CoH1. However, CoH2 really isn't that far behind, so that is not being overly harsh on CoH2 in my opinion. Sorry, you can't actually see that, can you? But there you go. So if we narrow the gap there, CoH2 catches up massively. And I think that is much fairer to say that CoH1 is slightly better, a few things considered, when you take into account its age and give it a bit of a break, considering it's an 11-year-old game. CoH2's no slouch, though, and after 4 years in development, extra development that is, it's now a much better game and much closer to its prequel. So thank you for watching this follow-up video. Hopefully you agree with my additional points. And if not, please tell me why, and any other things you've thought of, please add them in the comments. There won't be a part 3, rest assured, but it's always a good conversation to keep open, so thank you.